What is an application delivery controller, an ADC? Well, if that's the question on your mind, my friend, you have come to the right place. Let's jump in. I'd like you to imagine that we just had a great weekend and we're going back into the office on Monday morning, and our boss meets us with a big smile on his face and he says, "Guess what? I've got extra budget and we're going to build specialized web servers." And we say, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Well, we're going to build a web server that's specifically going to be optimized to work with clients that are connecting to that web server from an Android browser. We're also going to create a specialized web server to handle the content as it comes in from browsers on things like iPhones and iPads so that they can have an optimized experience on that platform. We're also going to create an additional server that's optimized for people coming in from Windows if they're using Chrome. And next year," continues the manager, "we're going to have specific web servers based on the languages of the browser. For example, if the user is coming in from a browser that indicates it's Japanese, meaning that's the language that the user is using, we're going to have a dedicated set of servers that includes the Japanese language. And as we continue on, we're going to support additional languages as well. It's going to be great." Now, here's the challenge that I need your help with, says the manager. "We know how to create a server that's optimized, for example, for a certain type of browser, and how to configure a server to support a specific type of language. But what we haven't figured out is how do we identify, for example, the type of client that's coming in and then make sure that that request gets to the correct server." So, for example, an Android browser would go to server 1, maybe as an example. And Safari, which is an Apple browser, which is running on an iPhone or an iPad, how do we make sure that gets redirected to the correct server that's optimized for that type of browser? And this is where you and I would get a big smile on our face because we know what we could do. We could put a device, for example, one of F5's products, right smack dab in the middle between the clients who are making the requests and the servers that have the answers and the content that the users are looking for. And this device in the middle could do several things. For example, we could direct or redirect specific requests to an appropriate resource. So, for example, if we see the request coming in and we can identify that it's coming from a specific type of browser, or we can identify that the browser supports a certain language, this device here in the middle could direct that request to the appropriate server to handle that type of content. So this device in the middle here could intercept, inspect that traffic or request, and it could transform the request and or the responses coming from those servers as that traffic goes between the clients and the servers. This device could also have the ability to verify the health and well-being of these servers to make sure they're up and available to respond to requests. And what we might call this magical device here between the client and the server is an application delivery controller. And it can be used to manage the delivery of our apps and services. Now, when we talk about applications and services, let's think together about some of the top applications that are used on the internet today. Very likely one of the top applications is going to be HTTP. So in the case of the user trying to access some resource, this application delivery controller, based on the type of client that's coming in or the language specified, and virtually anything else regarding that request that's being made can be looked at, analyzed, and then directed to the most appropriate resource on our back end to fulfill that user's request. So HTTP is an example of one of the applications that we could use in combination with an application delivery controller to intercept, inspect, direct, or redirect those requests to an appropriate resource. And in this case, one of those resources would be one of our 3 servers here on the back end. Another very popular application would be HTTPS. which uses techniques such as SSL or transport layer security, which has several benefits, including the ability to do authentication with what server we're really connected to. And secondly, with SSL/TLS, we can build secure sessions that are encrypted. So anyone eavesdropping on our packets as they go back and forth across the networks won't be able to identify what's in the payload of those packets because the content is encrypted, which provides confidentiality. Another huge application that's used all the time on the internet is DNS, Domain Name System. And it's DNS that allows us to go out to www.cbtnuggets.com, and it's DNS that resolves that name into one or more IP addresses that our computers then go ahead and use to connect to those resources. So these are 3 examples of applications that can be delivered over a network. And the application delivery controller, based on analyzing the request and knowing what we have as resources on the back end, can direct or redirect that traffic to the best resource, which allows that server on the back end to respond to that client's request. Now, one of the benefits of an application delivery controller is that if we have lots of requests coming in, and we have multiple servers on the back end that all have, for example, the same web content. As requests come in, the application delivery controller could say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and send the first request to server 1. And then the next request, it could go to server 2. And the third request could go to server 3 in kind of a round robin fashion. In addition, what we could do on this application delivery controller is we could forward requests to the least busy server at that moment. For example, if server 1 and server 2 both had 100 requests that they were currently servicing, and server 3 only had 50 requests that it was currently handling, the application delivery controller, being aware of exactly who's been served up how many requests, could go ahead and send that request to the device that has the current least number of connections and requests in process. And that goes back to this function of directing or redirecting specific requests to an appropriate resource. In this example, the appropriate resource would be one of our servers that has the content and has the least number of connections currently in place. But one of the common terms that this device also could be referred to is a LB, as in a load balancer, as it's assisting us in balancing the load across multiple resources on the back end. However, F5 and their platform, they do not like calling it a load balancer. That's like calling a Maserati a car. And part of the reason for that is because F5's product has the ability to do way more than simple load balancing on its platform, which is called BIG-IP. BIG-IP can be a physical appliance like this one right here, or it can be a virtualized appliance running in a virtualized environment, such as vSphere. In this nugget, we've identified that an application delivery controller, an ADC, such as F5's BIG-IP platform, has the ability to direct or redirect specific requests to the appropriate server resources that can handle those requests. And in doing that, it has the ability to intercept, inspect, and or transform those requests, as well as the responses that these servers are delivering to those clients. By monitoring the health of those backend servers, it can help reduce the risk of sending a request to a server that is not even up, which at the end of the day is going to improve the end user experience in using that application, such as HTTP web services. And now, my friend, I'd like to ask if you are open to a challenge. And if you're open to it, here's the challenge. I'd like you to find someone and explain to them what an ADC is, an application delivery controller, and name 2 or 3 of the benefits that using an application delivery controller can bring to an environment. And by doing so, it'll not only help that person understand what an ADC is, it'll also help reinforce that concept in your own mind as well. I look forward to seeing you in the next nugget. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.